The next speaker today is Professor Phoebe. Just a quick one. Professor Phoebe is a professor of marine biodiversity and climate change and the acting president of the National Research Center. She focuses on the impact of climate change on aquatic environment and organisms, and such as fish and coral reefs. As head of Water Pollution Research Department, she also serves as the deputy director of the Center of Excellence for Research and Applied Studies on Climate Change and Sustainable Development, which aims to be a scientific hub for climate change and sustainable development. She has supervised numerous master's and PhD students and actively collaborates with international organizations to address critical climate issues and advance climate solutions. So now let's listen to Professor Phoebe for the presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phoebe Koundouri. I'm a professor of economics, econometrics, and sustainability at the Athens University of Economics and Business and at the Technical University of Denmark. I lead the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation of IFORIA, which is a big alliance between different research and innovation centers, innovation accelerators, science policy networks, and scientific associations and academies working on the sustainability transition, providing science-based guidelines, science-based guidance for the transition to a sustainable world, a world that implements UN Agenda 2030, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the 169 targets between them. IFORIA basically brings together all the universities, research institutions, and innovation centers that I lead or co-lead or chair, and focuses with the help of more than 200 talented researchers on SDG and ESG measurement and sustainable finance. It focuses on developing sustainable pathways to climate neutrality and resilience, sustainable pathways for seas and oceans, sustainable pathways for the land use and water, food, energy, and biodiversity nexus, and that's a lot of work on innovation, incubation, and acceleration, as well as education, upskilling, and reskilling. Please, if you have further interest in what we do, or if you're interested to collaborate with us, visit our website and contact us. Today, I will mostly focus on how the transition to sustainability can be led by the companies, by the company sector. This is a slide that includes the developments with relevance to the sustainability transition since 2015. This is not to say that sustainability became part of the political agenda only in 2015. Actually, it has been part of the political agenda since the 70s. However, if you go back to 2015, when the SDGs were launched and the Paris Agreement was signed, you have a very good view of what is currently the policy framework, the international agreement framework, the laws and regulations that govern the efforts to achieving sustainability. And I will focus this a bit further on what the European Green Deal does and how it connects to the efforts for sustainability transition within the companies. So the European Green Deal is the European translation of the SDGs into a policy framework with explicit laws and regulations with 4 main axes: climate neutrality by 2050, clean tech leadership by European companies, reduction of pollution and protection of nature and biodiversity, and of course, a just transition, leave no one behind. Within the European Green Deal laws and regulations, we have something called the EU taxonomy. The EU taxonomy is the attempt of Europe to create a classification system of environmentally sustainable economic activities, and the aim is to improve the flow of money towards sustainable activities by enabling investors to reorient investments toward more sustainable technologies and business. We have 6 main areas that are classified as environmentally sustainable economic activities: climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, protection of water and marine resources, transition to circular economy, pollution control, and protection of ecosystems. It is also important to note that to be taxonomy aligned, an activity must contribute to at least one objective of the 6 that I just mentioned, and also be aligned with the do no significant harm principle. Now, it is important to be able to identify within your company, within your institution, within your country, activities that are relevant to this classification system, because if you do, then you can borrow cheaply. You can borrow with low interest rates and long-run loans, which makes it much easier to finance the investments you need to finance in order to achieve your goals. Within the EU taxonomy, we also have the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. This involves environmental, social, and governance disclosures that are supervised by the European Banking Authority, and they mainly consist of declarations from financial institutions having to do with the climate or environmental impact of assets and collateral, and the impacts of climate change to this, the green asset ratio and the banking book taxonomy alignment ratio, as well as actions that support the green transition and climate change mitigation and adaptation, but are not counted under the EU's taxonomy. It is quite important to understand that this is a revolution for the business world, because now all big companies have to submit a corporate sustainability report, and this requirement, legal requirement, extends the scope to all large companies and all companies listed on regulated markets. And this is what is valid for 2024. So all large companies, companies with a turnover of more than 400 million per year or more than 500 employees, and all companies that are in the stock exchange need to submit this year a sustainability report. And this report requires audit assurance of the reported information, and it's really demanding in terms of the detail with regards you have to report your environmental, social, and governance impacts. It requires companies to digitally tag the reported information, and it has to be, what you report has to be machine readable and fit into the European single access point as per Capital Markets Union action plans. And this is also extended to fiduciary duties and asset management. We have 6 amending delegated acts on fiduciary duties, investment, and insurance advice that ensure that financial firms include sustainability in their procedures and their investment advice. And not only that, but we also have the 2027 requirements for all SMEs to submit a sustainability report. So this is no longer just for large companies. The small and medium enterprises will have an obligation, a legal obligation, to submit a sustainability report in 2027. That's just 2 years ahead. Of course, the requirements for the SMEs in terms of the detail of the reporting will be much lower. It will be a much easier report. At the moment, the EIB is producing guidelines for SMEs, but it is a revolution again, because by 2027, each and every company in each and every economy of the European Union will have to report on its impact on the environment, on society, and on governance. And the question now is how we support the companies to do that, and also, and quite importantly, to convince companies to use these reporting requirements as a huge opportunity to uncover the wealth of profitable opportunities that are hidden in this sustainability transition. How are we going to do that? Well, in Euphoria Group, we have developed what is called the Euphoria Metrics. It's an e-tool that can support, and I would say go even further than support, educate, critically educate, and provide the skills and knowledge to the companies to use their corporate sustainability reporting as a tool to identify the way forward for their companies, to identify how they can become more cost-effective, how they can become more interesting for clients, that is, increase their market share, and how at the end of the day they can improve their profits. So I will go very quickly through this tool. I think I have another 5 minutes. So there are 3 stages. And the idea here is to first map the entire value chain of the company, both products and services companies, map their stakeholders, and implement a materiality assessment by the stakeholders in order to identify the material issues for the company at each and every segment of the value chain. In this way, you understand the value chain of the company with detail, and you also build data gathering and management processes for each segment of the value chain. You should know that the sustainability transition is not only technically demanding, it's also very data hungry. So it is important to have data acquisition and management structures in a company in order to allow you to continuously measure and assess your progress towards sustainability, towards implementing the ESG criteria, but also towards identifying your profit margins. The second step is to measure. So here we have ESG KPIs in accordance with the sustainability reporting standards. We map the ESG KPIs across the value chain. And then we do another step that allows us not just to measure our performance against ESG, but also to map ESG KPIs on SDG indicators. This is very useful for companies because if you map against ESG indicators, you know where you are. You also have an explicit SDG target. And then if you see the graph on the left, on the right-hand side of my slide, it allows you to identify the gap between where you are, performance, for example, today, and where you need to be every year so that in 2030, you can achieve the SDG. So we propose in our tool not just measure KPIs according to ESG, but also according to SDGs, because SDGs have not just environmental, social, and governance criteria, but they also have growth, economic criteria in it, and they also have explicit targets. The third part of the tool is assessment and monitoring. So we create an ESG and SDG dashboard that allow us to measure almost in real time, depending on the data that we manage to acquire, and continuously update the level of implementation of SDGs and trends to 2030 and 2050. We also include in this assessment and monitoring monetization of externalities or intangible assets and all effects on the environment and society that are not monetized in markets because they are not traded in markets. We include a tool that allows direct monetization of these effects. This because you can articulate in monetary terms your positive impacts on the environment, on society, on governance. And because these impacts are monetized, they can be integrated into cost-benefit analysis. And then we design hybrid metrics to optimize for value and restructure the business plan of the company. So this is a tool not just for reporting, but for restructuring the business plan of a company in a way that it becomes ESG and SDG compatible, and at the same time, it builds on the potential of increasing its profit by lowering cost, by increasing market share. This is the process, the full value chain, map the value chain of the company, do the materiality assessment on the environmental pillar, including recycling and waste, water stewardship, carbon emissions, the social pillar, employee development, employee diversity, occupational health, employee engagement, community engagement, governance, business ethics, transparency, data protection, and then you map the relevant KPIs across the value chain. And as I told you, we also believe that it's quite important that you do the ESG, but also SDG mapping and scoring, because you can model and evaluate SDG performance at company level and across the value chain. And the benefit of doing that is that you introduce financial and growth criteria, not just ESG criteria, and you have explicit targets. At the end of the day, you have a dashboard like this that tells you explicitly each section of the value chain, how it performs every day, every month, every minute, depending on the data that you have across the different criteria. And let me close by saying that it is important that companies transform. And I will show you an exercise using 11,000 companies, an extended data set across the world. This is 97% of global market capitalization. And we use 600 ESG KPIs from Reuters, Bloomberg, Asset4. And we use arbitrage asset pricing theory extended to include ESG and SDG related risks. And we show here that the companies that are able to hedge using a portfolio choice of stocks that can empower them to hedge against the risk of SDGs are those that are better performing in the stock exchange. Here you see the SDG footprint, that is the sensitivity of portfolio to specific SDG factors. And you can also see how ESG strategy within a company, and here we are talking about companies that are listed in the stock exchange, stocks, and this is an example from Athens, but we have it globally as well, and the results are similar, qualitatively similar. If you have an ESG strategy, then the value of $1 invested to an ESG winner versus an ESG loser is significant, and stocks that are ESG compatible significantly outperform the market. And moreover, we can also investigate using information from the media and social media, ESG scores versus ESG controversy. This is to say that we use this information in order to uncover greenwashing. And we can, if you are a large company, it is quite easy to uncover greenwashing. And in Greece, we find that financial companies and utility are more likely to engage in greenwashing, statistically significant greenwashing in these sectors of the economy, financial and utilities. But of course, greenwashing decreased after 2019 with the introduction of the European Green Deal, and this is also interesting to see. In closing, I just want to say that in doing this sustainability transition, you need to be aware of how integrated the sustainability transition is. You need to understand how the climate scenarios are integrated in the energy and transport system, land use system, marine systems, health systems, socioeconomic systems, innovation systems, and also how important is to work on these transition pathways with your stakeholders, and also understand how important it is to empower your stakeholder, your providers, the collaborators in your value chain, but importantly, your employees, your CEOs, your CFOs, providing them the capacity to understand how they can make this transition, have the skills and knowledge to understand how they can make this transition. This is the work we do in the Global Climate Hub, integrating all these are global level, regional level, country level, but even company level and institutional level. And my closing note has to do with the importance of the capacity. We've done a study investigating how many of the skills and occupations in Europe exist in the labor market, and in order to support the implementation of the European Green Deal. So this is a AEA exercise with all the laws and regulations of the European Green Deal, detailed into knowledge and skills that the labor force has to have in order to implement all these laws and regulations. And we identified that 85% of the jobs needed, the skills needed for the sustainability transition are not in the labor market yet. This calls for all companies and businesses, but also governments and public-private collaborations, partnerships, to identify this issue, this challenge, and make a big investment on upskilling and reskilling and revising curricula at university level, but even before, in order to produce the labor force that can implement the European Green Deal and the SDGs. Thank you very much for your attention, it's also always a big pleasure supporting the Institute. Thank you very much.
So that was a very interesting presentation from another perspective from Professor Phoebe.